Bama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Hey everyone, welcome into a new episode of The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. The first thing I want and need you to do is hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well, subscribers. Hit that notification bell, be notified when we drop content on our YouTube page. I am here each week to break down the latest in Crimson Tide football recruiting news. And on this episode of The Process, I want to talk about what is next for the Crimson Tide on the recruiting trail after picking up a commitment from four-star defensive lineman Edgar Houston on yesterday. I'll talk about a couple of guys who have commitment dates coming up. I also talk about a couple of Alabama targets who were sporting Alabama gloves over the weekend as an opportunity to get out to several games throughout last weekend, starting from Thursday through Saturday. I was on the road checking out a lot of Alabama commits and targets. Of course, we'll talk about those guys on this episode of The Process and also talk about what I feel is coming up next for Alabama on the recruiting trail in the 2023 recruiting cycle. But we're going to start today's show by actually talking about a 2024 running back I had an opportunity to talk with and catch up with and see in action on Thursday night as I got out to Andalusia High School to watch the Andalusia Bulldogs take on Op in Andalusia, and I got an opportunity to check out 2024 four-star running back Amari Burnett, who is really interested in the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Auburn Tigers at the moment. Both in-state programs offered him over the last couple of months. When we take a look at Burnett, currently standing at 6'2", weighs approximately 200 pounds, and he looks the part. As you guys see some of the footage that I was able to capture, he's very well put together. Did not have the best game on Thursday night, struggled with a bit of some knee tightness. Looks as if he had a little bit of a knee injury, so he had to battle through that through most of the night. Did score a touchdown late in the game, flashing some quickness to go along with that 6'2", 200 pound frame. From what I've seen, it seems as if he is a tougher runner. Has some decent speed on him, as you guys can see in that last play. But the Crimson Tide and the Auburn Tigers look to be really standing out because he had the Alabama gloves on. He was sporting the Auburn Tigers towel. Had an opportunity to catch up with them after the game to talk about both schools. Of course, when talking about the Auburn Tigers, he said he feels that they are going to be a really good football team in the years to come. He said he feels Alabama is one of the greatest, the biggest program in the nation. They have a great coaching staff. They work each and every day to be the best that they can be. Said he has a great relationship with Coach Gillespie, who is the Crimson Tide's running backs coach. When asked about Nick Saban, he said he feels Nick Saban is a great coach, the greatest coach. He's going to push everybody, treat everybody equally, and he is that guy. As far as his recruitment is concerned, he does have a top 12. Alabama and Auburn is listed in the top 12, of course, but as far as moving forward in his recruitment, he's looking forward to September 1st, which is going to be a huge date for prospects in the 2024 recruiting class, because that is when college coaches are able to directly contact them through private communication. So he's waiting to September 1st to see which schools will reach out to him to see who really is going to prioritize him in the 2024 recruiting cycle. So that is what he's looking forward to make the next step in his recruitment, as far as cutting down his top 12 to a smaller top schools list. But that is who I had an opportunity to catch up with on Thursday to start off my weekend. On Friday, I was in Georgia to check out the Crimson Tides, a couple of Crimson Tide commits in action, actually, when Buford took on Thompson. But I also got an opportunity to check on a couple of future Alabama targets in the 2024 recruiting class as well, starting with KJ Bolden, a 2024 5-star defensive back out of Buford High School. Actually scored the first touchdown for Buford on the offensive side of the ball as a wide receiver, showing off his versatility. One of the top athletes in the 2024 recruiting class is going to be in the conversation to be the number one player in the 2024 class, as well as most recruiting sites have been rated pretty high with that 5-star rating. As well, as you guys can see, can make plays on both sides of the football. A dynamic, versatile athlete. Reminds me of the last one of the last prospects to go from Bruford, Alabama, and Isaiah Bond. We saw Bond play on both sides of the football for the Wolves as well before becoming a wide receiver at the University of Alabama like he is, with him going into his freshman season, his upcoming season. But I had an opportunity to catch up with Bolden. He told me that he has a close relationship with Alabama's coaching staff, specifically with Alabama's wide receiver coach, Harmon Wiggins. Also has a close relationship with Crimson Tide safeties coach and Georgia area recruiter Charles Kelly. In terms of talking about Nick Saban, he said he feels he is GOAT, he's legendary. I would not mind playing for a coach like that. As far as when he will get back to Tuscaloosa, I think you're going to hear a lot of recruits talk about this. He said he's most likely going to look at getting back to Tuscaloosa when the Crimson Tide take on the Texas A&M Aggies in October. We all know how highly anticipated that matchup is, and a lot of recruits will be in attendance. And 5-star DB KJ Bolden is a guy who looks as if he's going to be in attendance for that matchup. A guy to watch out for in the 2024 recruiting class. Another 2024 prospect who caught my eye was Edgar Houston, a 2024 4-star defensive end edge rusher at 6'4", 255 pounds. He's going to be one of those tweener defensive linemen. With them already being 6'4", 255, it'll be interesting to see how he continues to grow and continues to get bigger, because he has the speed off of the snap to be an edge rusher. But like you guys see on this play right here, he can be an interior guy, take on some blocks, stack and shed, be disruptive as an interior guy at the next level as well. But he is a top target for the Crimson Tide in the 2024 recruiting class. Definitely a guy to keep your eyes on moving forward, with them being from the state of Georgia. You know, the Bulldogs are going to be heavily involved in this recruitment, but he's going to be a guy who will be in the conversation to be a 5-star defensive lineman in the 2024 class. It really impressed me with his length, his physicalness, the way that he continued to go after the football in terms of rushing the passer. Actually came up with the sack. Unfortunately, I did not get that on video, but I did get several of his top plays on video. As you guys can see, he was able to come up with a fumble, knock a pass down with that great length. I really like what I saw out of Edgar Houston, the 2024 4-star defensive end out of Bruford High School in Bruford, Georgia. Along with these Alabama targets who were in action, a couple of Alabama commits were in action when the Bruford Wolves took on the Thompson Warriors on Friday, with Tony Mitchell and Justice Haynes squaring off for the first games of their respective senior seasons. I'm going to start off by talking about Mitchell, the 2023 5-star defensive back out of Thompson, who currently stands at 6'2", weighs approximately 190 pounds at the moment. He's put together, as you guys can see. He almost looks like a linebacker, like I've consistently said every time I get an opportunity to evaluate him. But he lined up at cornerback, which is what we expected, because when I got an opportunity to see him in spring practice, when Thompson was going through spring practice, he said he was going to play cornerback, getting back to his original roots. Started off at cornerback for Thompson when he was in the 9th grade. I remember his first game, he took a pick 6 back to the house and quickly became a 5-star cornerback, one of the first guys to get a 5-star rating in this 2023 recruiting class a couple of years ago by multiple recruiting sites. But he did not get tested a lot. You guys see him going up against 5-star defensive back and 5-star athlete KJ Bolden a lot in this film, so he did not get tested. I think the last play was the only time he got the ball thrown his way. Made a great open field tackle on Justice Haynes here, getting lower than Haynes, which is something that's very hard to do. See him match up against KJ Bolden as well. He did miss a tackle on Haynes, but Haynes is really elusive. I think that just shows how elusive he is, and the fact that he's able to make moves at the line of scrimmage. A very good play by Justice Haynes. But overall, Tony Mitchell played as expected, as him with him being a 5-star defensive back, definitely still worthy of his rating. I think him and Thompson's defense played pretty solid overall. But Haynes had a big day. Haynes, I think he had almost more than 150 all-purpose yards. Starting with this kickoff return, he took for 97 yards, was basically bust the game wide open for the Bruford Wolves. A game that was a defensive slugfest early on. Haynes busted open with that impressive run, but he was a complete running back in my opinion, showing off that elusiveness, like I said, making a move at the line of scrimmage, showing off that great contact balance that he runs with. Very, very impressive. I think one of the things that really stood out to me, I think probably was one of the most impressive plays he put together was when he blocked Peter Woods. Of course, I think the turf monster got Woods, made Woods fall, but I think he did a great job of throwing a great block, giving his quarterback a few more seconds to make a pass, because when you got a guy like Woods coming after you, you at least need somebody to get in the way, especially when he's coming in basically on a free rush, because the play is going to be shown a little bit later in this video. But Woods basically comes on a free rush, and the only thing between Peter Woods and his and Bruford's quarterback is Justin Saints, and he did a really good job of throwing a block. And I really liked how comfortable he looked in pass protection, which is something you do not see a lot out of a younger running back. So I thought that was really impressive when I saw Haynes in action. Also, how smoothly he can transition from being a blocker into a receiving threat is really impressive. There goes that play, throws a nice block on Woods. The quarterback gets that extra second to at least get the ball off. So I was really impressed with Justice Haynes when I saw him in action. I also returned to Georgia the following day to check out a couple of other Alabama commits, starting with Dillon Lonergan, the 4-star quarterback out of Brookwood High School in Georgia. Had to shake off a couple of misfortunes early. Fumbled on his first drive of his senior season, came back on the second drive, threw an interception, but he shook it off and made some impressive throws late in the game, showing off that strong arm that he possesses, because this is a guy who can throw a 90-mile-per-hour fastball. So we know he has a very strong arm, but I was really impressed with his ability to be a running threat. He showed off he's not, I wouldn't call him a dual threat yet, but he's a guy who can make some moves with his feet, and he was able to show that in this particular matchup. Was called on to throw some short passes here and there, did not go deep a lot, went deep a couple of times, and I think they relied basically on them going underneath, throwing a lot of screen plays. I saw he hit a hitch in the middle of the field, just a lot of short and medium routes. This was a throw that was basically came into his receiver's hand by the way of the tip drill, but we see him in his ability to evade pressure and get outside the pocket to at least pick up some yards. So I think he is a better runner than many may believe. So I was impressed with Dillon Lonergan as well, the 2023 4-star quarterback out of Brookwood High School, who's verbally committed to Alabama at the moment. Another guy had an opportunity to check out at Mercedes-Benz Stadium is Caleb Downs, the 2023 5-star defensive back out of Mill Creek High School, who he definitely should be in the conversation to be the #1 player in the country. This kid plays with his head on fire, quickly diagnoses things so fast, and he plays so fast, and it's really impressive. I really was speechless by the way that he can quickly diagnose things that come downhill and help and run support, not afraid to get dirty, not afraid to put his head in the action, make some great open field tackles, even when it looks as if he's the only guy that is most likely going to have to make that tackle for Mill Creek High School. He comes up with it every time, making nice low tackles, bringing his arms, bringing his pass. No arm tackling by Caleb Downs at all. Play really good in coverage, showing off that range that he possesses, and come down in the box play almost like a linebacker. I think he's going to be a guy who is going to be hard to keep off of the field the moment he steps onto the University of Alabama in the future. So I was impressed by all of the Alabama commits I saw throughout the weekend. Another target who I saw in action was Bryce Thornton, a 2023 defensive back out of Milton High School in Milton, Georgia. He's flashed, especially as a kick return on this play, showing off his elusiveness as a ball carrier. I saw him come down, make a couple of tackles as well, as this video will show. As you guys can see, sporting the Alabama gloves does have an official visit to Alabama scheduled in October when the Crimson Tide take on the Texas A&M Aggies. But the Florida Gators are very heavily involved in this recruitment as well. We're actually hosting for an official visit after the Tide host them for an official in October, looking to announce a commitment around his birthday in November. Looks like a 2-team race between the Florida Gators and the Alabama Crimson Tide. A long way to go with them announcing a commitment in November. We will see what happens. Thornton impressed Alabama's coaching staff at camp during the summer. I think he really rose on the recruiting board after that performance. He picked up an offer from the Crimson Tide actually during the spring, so we'll see what Thornton does. Another top Alabama target who's set to announce a commitment later this week is Amari Vickers, a 4-star defensive back out of Florida, currently down to Alabama, Oklahoma, and Michigan. Oklahoma looks like the favorite heading into Vickers' decision. He has a great relationship, of course, with former Alabama defensive backs coach Jay Valai, with him being at Oklahoma. The Sooners actually were the last program to host Vickers as well, so they have momentum heading into his decision. Of course, Alabama hosted him for an official visit in June, and many thought that he was projected to go to Alabama. Alabama was at least the favorite, have been the favorite for a good part of his recruitment, but it looks like the Sooners definitely have some momentum heading into his upcoming decision. Speaking of another Alabama and Oklahoma recruiting battle, we turn our attention to Jordan Renard really quickly, because I want to talk about what is next for the Crimson Tide after picking up Edgar Houston, specifically along the defensive line. And Jordan Renard is one of those guys to keep your eyes on. Has a commitment date set for September, has a final two, Alabama, Oklahoma, has visits set up to both of those schools in the future. The Crimson Tide, of course, became one of the favorites to land him after a great official visit in June. I still feel the Tide are in a really good position with Renard. He's a guy who will most likely be an edge rusher, considers himself to be a Swiss Army knife. Be sure to check out our feature on Jordan Renard after we caught up with him at the Under Armour Future 50 event. I still feel the Tide are in a really great position with Renard at the moment. Another Texas product of the Crimson Tide are going after what he looked to be in a good position with at the moment is Jalen Hale, the 2023 four-star wide receiver. Actually wore Alabama gloves in his past game last Friday night. His first game of the season was rocking the Alabama gloves. Of course, he has a final three at the moment: Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. Took an official visit to Georgia during the summer. We'll take an official visit to Alabama actually when they take on the Utah State Aggies on September 3rd. Actually return to Tuscaloosa in July for the Crimson Tide Champions Cookout. Told me he had a great opportunity to vibe with Alabama's coaching staff and their commits. So the Tide looks to be in a really improved position with Jalen Hale as of late. We will see what happens as the Crimson Tide continue to recruit wide receivers in the 2023 recruiting class. I know they're still going after Hale, of course, but they also have their eyes on Jaron Hamilton, a 2023 wide receiver out of Gainesville. To close out this show, I do want to bring up a graphic, talk a little bit about the Crimson Tide's top flip targets at the moment. Of course, the Crimson Tide is still going after Keon Keeley, the 2023 five-star defensive end out of Florida by the way of Berkeley Prep in Tampa. The Crimson Tide, the Ohio State Buckeyes, and the Florida Gators look to be the three teams who are the favorites after Keeley announced a decommitment from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish recently. So the Tide are still going after Keeley, definitely one of their top targets at the moment, available targets. Matter of fact, he's not even a flip target because he committed from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. But a couple of other guys to keep your eyes on are Santerian Perkins, four-star athlete, verbally committed to Ole Miss. The Crimson Tide still are going after him. Sharif Denson, a four-star DB who's verbally committed to the Florida Gators. Peter Woods, verbally committed to the Clemson Tigers. Put on another dominant performance when Thompson took on Bruford on Friday. He's just consistently dominant. You're rarely going to find a guy his size who plays as quickly as he does, as far as being able to play sideline to sideline. Great lateral quickness, just straight dominance, a strong defensive lineman who will most likely be an interior guy at the next level. Tide also keeping their eyes out on Kelby Collins, who announced his commitment to the Florida Gators recently. So the Tide are going after some Gator commits in the future. But Collins, of course, grew up an Alabama fan. His father and his mother and his parents are still Alabama fans, but they definitely are going to be Florida fans in the future. If Kelby Collins sticks to his commitment and signs with the Gators, but the Crimson Tide are holding out hope that they possibly can get him on campus for an official visit, which is something that is possibly still on the table with them having official visits left, and he has not taken an official visit to Alabama just yet. The Crimson Tide's defensive line coach Freddie Roach is leading the Crimson Tide's push for Kelby Collins at the moment. But that is what I want to talk about with you guys on today's episode of The Process. Give you guys some updates from my past trips over the weekend. Also talk about what is next for the Crimson Tide. When you take a look at the 2023 recruiting class, as far as guys announcing commitment dates, guys who will take official visits in the near future. Jalen Hale will be on campus on September 3rd. Amari Vickers announced his commitment later this week. You also have Jordan Renard set to announce his commitment on next month in September. I'm pretty sure a lot more updates will continue to go out as things move forward, especially looking at the Crimson Tide's future visitor list for their first game of the season when they host the Utah State Aggies in Bryant-Denny Stadium. But thank you guys so much for joining me today. Be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well. Subscribers, hit the notification bell, be notified when we drop content on our YouTube channel. Then head over to touchdownalabama.com, pick up your subscription today. With that subscription, you will be able to read all of our subscriber only articles, get your hands on our yearly print magazine issue as well. Then head over to the Google Play Store if you have an Android device, download the Touchdown Alabama app. You have an Apple device, be sure to download the app in the Apple App Store. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama.
Process.